True stories, urban legends, and things people wish they'd never experienced. If you love horror that feels real, you're in the right place. Welcome to Chilling Stories. Before we start, I need you to know this isn't a creepypasta story. This is something that actually happened to me. A few years ago, I accidentally wandered onto a Navajo reservation, and an old man gave me directions to a hidden canyon. He called it dangerous, but also magical. He said I'd come back different if I came back at all. I went away and I never talked about what happened there. Until now. This is the story of the canyon the Navajo elders warned me about. Growing up in Arizona, stories about the unknown were just normal. There were native legends and skinwalkers and UFO sightings, vortexes in the desert. If you live out there long enough, you stop laughing at that stuff. Because the wilderness feels old, and sometimes it feels like it's watching you. I spent most of my childhood outside, hunting and hiking, camping, so wandering off trails never really bothered me. Until one hike changed everything. One late spring afternoon, I was miles into the mountains when I accidentally wandered into a small cluster of old mud adobe houses. There were no roads, no power lines. They were just homes, sitting quietly in the dusk like they had been there for 100 years. A few people stepped outside when they heard me, and they watched me carefully. Then an elder walked over. It was the traditional clothing, the headdress, and the calm eyes. He asked me if I was lost, and I told him no, that I was just exploring. He smiled and invited me to eat with him. That night felt like stepping back in time. We sat around a fire. It was just eating and talking and sharing stories, much like what I'm doing now. More people kept joining us, like they didn't get visitors often. Everyone talked, except one man. He just sat in the shadows, staring at me, and he never spoke once. He just watched. At some point, I mentioned yearly walkabouts, 2 to 4 weeks alone in the wilderness. That's when the silent man finally moved. He came over and sat directly in front of me. He told me about a canyon. He called it dangerous, but magical. He said if I went there, I'd come back different if I came back. He said that it was something strange about this place. And then he handed me an old map and walked away without another word. The next morning, an old woman stopped me before I left. She pressed a small talisman into my hand, then said something I didn't understand at the time. Dip your bullets in the white ash at the hardest part of fire. And just walked away. September came, and it was time for my walkabout. And for some reason, taking that map felt right. The canyon was remote and hard to reach even in my Jeep. The trail looked like it had been abandoned for years, and after hours of hiking, I reached a narrow crack between two cliffs, filled with chest-deep water. I had to wade sideways for nearly 2 hours just to get through. When it finally opened up, there was a hidden valley. It was a lake, cliffs on all sides, and no signs of humans. There was no trash, and there was no footprints. It was just nothing. It was quiet. There were no birds and no bugs. It was just nothing but silence. It was the kind of silence that messes with your head, because nature is never that quiet unless something is wrong. The next day, I found caves along the cliffside. Inside one, there was a pile of bones. Animal bones or human bones? An old cradle sitting on a stone shelf. No tracks, but mine from when I walked in earlier. It was like whatever made that pile never walked out. When I stepped outside, about 70 feet away, I saw the biggest wolf I have ever seen. At first, it looked like it had been standing upright, but then it dropped to all fours, and it just stared at me. It didn't growl, and it didn't move. I fired 2 shots near it, and it didn't even flinch. Not a twitch. I looked down my binoculars and then looked back up, and it was gone. It didn't make a sound, it didn't leave any tracks. There was no sign that it was ever even there in the first place. That night, I saw a light flickering near the caves, like a candle, but the candle inside had been an accident. There's no way it should have been burning. I didn't sleep much that night. Next morning, I found another cave. Outside it, bones and an old artifact hung from a twisted tree. They were like charms, or warnings. Inside, the walls were covered in paintings, and the deeper inside the cave I went, the colder it got. At the very back, there was an altar made of wood and bone, and up on a ledge, I saw what looked like a small woman. She was pale and had a white face. She was wearing a crown of branches with antlers. She wasn't moving, and I thought she was mummified. Then I heard whispering, a voice speaking something I couldn't understand. I looked back up, and she was gone. After experiencing this, I decided it was time to get out of there, and I ran. My headlamp died, and the whole time it felt like something was right behind me. It was breathing, matching my steps. When I got outside, all the bones hanging from the tree were gone, and it was like they were never there. Back at camp, the wolf came back, but this time, it stayed standing up on 2 legs. It was watching me, like a person would. I shot it multiple times, but it had no effect. It just kept walking towards me. It was like the bullets meant nothing. My gun clicked empty and I panicked. And then the talisman fell out of my bag, and I remember what the old woman told me. White ash. I dipped an arrow into the ashes of the fire, drew, and fire. It hit the wolf, and the sound it made, it didn't sound like an animal. It sounded human. It was screaming at me. The wolf ran off into the trees, and for just a small second, I saw that old antler-crowned woman standing there waiting for it. It was like they were together. I didn't sleep that night, and I left at sunrise, and I never went back to that cave. The next spring I returned to the village, and that same old woman hugged me and said, "You heard me." The man who gave me the map was gone, and he had disappeared, and no one would let me tell my story, and one older just kept whispering one word over and over, "Yi Nadoshi." Later I learned what that meant. It meant Skinwalker. I still have the talisman, and sometimes when I'm alone in the woods, I swear I feel something watching me, waiting, like it remembers me, and like it knows I might come back one day.